Welcome, 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 dear ones. Welcome to the Intentional Creativity Museum. We are so delighted to have you with us for the exhibit for Julie Steelman, ENTHEOS, Connecting to the Spiritual Essence of Wild Earth, photography and book release event. And we are so grateful to welcome all of you, our community, to this celebration. Julie, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here in this context and sharing this body of work that you were definitely one of the loudest voices, a little dynamite under my chair, because this had been my sacred medicine for so long and I've only shared bits and pieces, and you really gave me permission to step
Mm,
fully into what it was that I was experiencing as I 2016 really, excuse me, 2015 really took a change for me,
mm,
and the embodiment of it was coming through in really different ways. And then joining in your work with intentional creativity through Motherboard and Color of Woman, your big programs, gave me a different way seeing from the inside out and
mm,
having completely different experiences. And I
mm,
feel like I'm finally at that place where I'm equipped to
mm.
capture the essence of what it is I'm actually experiencing.
Wow, that just gave me chills. So beautifully said, Julie. Thank you so much. And I just can't even express what an honor it is to have you and to have this work and just feel in my own magical way the presence of the animals who are being represented. And usually when we have a museum show, because it's virtual, right? So we walk
Right.
through the doors of the museum, but let's do this a little bit of a playful thing. And then I know you're going to set the context for the show. But so, okay, everybody, imagine with us that you are at the museum. And Julie, you have to imagine this in your body because you got to get this is your show, baby. Like, this is it, where it's happening now, right? The feeling is real. I texted Julie before and I was like, it feels real, right? Because this is so real. So imagine the doors of museum. You can see the color wheel, and we're all gathered outside and we're ready to go, and we go through, but instead of paintings on the walls, we are actually in the wild sacred earth space. It's so unbelievable. So I just invite you all, really don't miss this part, to use your imagination to walk through and just see, hear, smell, and be in the presence that we have just walked into wild sacred earth. So thank you all so much for coming. Here we are. Let us feel our feet on this ground and also offer respect to the ground where each one of you lives now, and respect to the ground where each one of these creatures we're going to behold where they live, respect to the indigenous elders and keepers in all the places where the animals are. And so that as we're creating this sacred space and this quantum wild museum, that we're truly generating the spirit of respect, of honor, and relationship. So, Julie, tell us about what's happening. So, imagine now Julie's walking out. She comes, she's walking out of the bush. I think she maybe is even has her camera and her outfit she wears when she's out there. All right. Tell us.
Yeah. I'm definitely sporty spice in the bush, just so you know. I don't have my Shiloh attire on. And it's lip gloss because so the context for this is I've been sitting curating this for a long time, unbeknownst to me. It started as a young child. When I was 7 years old, we'd watch Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom every Sunday night. And I was the youngest and the only girl. So I had a big bowl of popcorn and an apple. They made me sit on the floor and change the channel because back then there were no voice remotes. And I was mesmerized and I was transported to Africa, and this big ding ping came in and it said, "You need to go to Africa before you die." And it was an imperative. And I was like, my little kidness didn't know that I should question that. You know, like, as an adult, I would have been. And and in my mind's eye, I'm looking around the room and I'm like, my brothers and my parents, they never leave their zip code, you know? He's like, I'm gonna have to make my own money. This will never happen. My parents will never let me go. They don't even let me straggle from school home. They're not gonna let me go to Africa. So it put me on this epic trajectory. And I didn't go until 2007 with my husband at the time, but this, I'd been going underwater and I'd been photographing underwater, and I just couldn't get enough of it. And Mary Oliver's quote, "Let the soft animal of your body love what it loves," was so poignant to me, because it's here. This deep care, this deep love, that there's something here in me that needs to let this be, needs to follow this.
Yes.
And so I'm excited about this time on earth. I know it's epic, it's crazy, it's radical, it's chaotic, it's transformative. It's not knocking on our front door, it moved in.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no getting away from it. The rapid decline of species, climate change, the climate change is affecting food chains, is affecting habitats, is affecting species. We're losing biodiversity at an epically rapid rate. Permafrost is thawing. That's the deep frozen earth under the tundra in the northern and by the poles. There are some scientists who argue things like COVID come out of a thawed archetypal system that's carrying, this energy field that's been frozen for so long. There's things in it we're not aware of. Mm-hmm. This is not a doom and gloom thing. And I say all this in service, this is a truth telling about where we're at, and that there's epic grief. But I named this ENTHEOS because the word enthusiasm comes from the Greek word entheos, which means the divine within, the witnessing and awareness of that. That's what I experience in the spiritual essence of earth. And I'm excited because we have been gobsmacked in the face with the condition of our planet, to the point that we're experiencing very heavy grief. And it is also awakening us to how much we care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so instead of the trauma of it, how do we be with it and become generative stewards? Given that we're now the dominant species on the planet, how do we become the ones that curate and co-create a planet forward consciousness? That's what this conversation is about. These images are about what it's like to be toe to toe with these animals, to smell them, to feel them, that they have more than their five senses, and so do we. They're just better at using them.
And Julie, you said that when you are out in the bush, that you can feel their presence before you and the other photographers see them.
Yeah, I've had numerous accounts of, one that comes to mind is being in Botswana on the Chobe River and driving a boat down, and there's some real thick bushy areas, and we're driving and I'm like, stop. And Johan's like, why? And I'm like, there's a lion. And he's like, there's no lion. And he backs up the boat, a little bit. There's a lion. And it's like somehow I've taken on some of their qualities and characteristics and can sort of see out of the side of my head, but it's more of a peripheral awareness. It's that heart. I get pinged in my heart before I'm actually conscious of visually seeing it. Because seeing it first and registering it is a slower process than, oh, that's right there.
Right, because the field of the heart is registering that, and you're feeling each other. I love that. Julie, what would you hope for our guests who are gathered here today? We're so grateful for each one of you.
Yes.
What would you hope for our guests today, or is there any framework or awareness that you would like them to view this through?
My intention here is for you to really sit with what wild earth is, and to awaken a reverence and respect beyond what you already feel for that deep care for the planet. And I'm going to tell you my stories, but let the animals transmit to you in the way they transmit, and see what you see? What do you experience? Because I think in the beauty and the joy, and Shiloh, we talk about this in the resonant field of beauty, that we can access our higher creativity. And that's what I want to ignite in us becoming generative stewards, becoming the restorative, replenishing species on the planet. That would be my hope, because then we can start linking arms. The politicians aren't going to do it for us. It's going to be us. We need to do it. We need to be the earth warrior goddesses, gods and goddesses, linking arms and doing this work, however big your piece of it is or isn't. If it's a potted plant to 1,000,000 hectares in South Africa, doesn't matter. But it matters that we do it and that we each do our piece. And I want to foster that. And I hope this brings up a type of reverence and respect. I'm going to share a story of mountain gorillas that will really touch your heart about how to be with the grief and still live.
Thank you so much, Julie. We're so delighted to behold this experience. I know you're going to let us know how the presentation is going to go. And once
Hopefully
again,
well.
and I just want to once again thank all of our members at the Intentional Creativity Museum who literally finance and make experiences like this that are focused around education, storytelling, imagery, women artists. So I just really want to honor all of our members who make this possible and our artists, because as soon as we founded the museum in 2020 as the virtual aspect, I said to Amber, our curatorial director and president of the foundation, that we have to have a show for Julie and feature these incredible beings. So thank you everyone for being here. And thank you, Julie, for being here.
Thank you all so much. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for this, Shiloh, and the Intentional Creativity Foundation and all the sisters whom I know personally and don't know personally, and the holding of each other in giving us a space for voice and expression. There may be times that I get emotional. This has been sitting within me for a really long time. Pieces I've shared, pieces I don't share. There's stories I'm going to tell you I've never shared before. And there is going to be some sharing gymnastics here on Zoom. So I apologize if there is unelegant moments, because the PowerPoint can't hold the videos and it all crashes. So I had to separate some things. So I'm going to do my best to navigate all of that, and just take a stretch if it gets a little unelegant, and hopefully it won't. So intentional creativity is that, us creating art. And for me, the camera is my canvas. This camera sensor that's inside of here is my canvas. And the lens is the portal through which I look. Sometimes in our paintings, we paint portals. And I paint with light, or do the best that I can to paint with light, and using technology and settings. And nature tells me the stories. And so this is my intentional creativity. And the one thing I want to share with you about is that the lens looks both ways. What I mean by that is I'm looking through the camera and there's what's going on over here, but there's also what's going on over here. And I've had to really own what I'm thinking or feeling. I had a costly adventure years ago of being on a trip around some emotionally toxic people, and it showed up in my photos. They were terrible. They were out of focus because I was out of focus. So it's very metaphorical. And that's why when you see certain images, they're really potent and they speak to you, because there's some imprinting that went on in that moment of that shared moment between me and an animal. All right, so I'm going to share, and hopefully this will go well. Okay. So I just want to start off with a quote from Earl Nightingale, and he said, "The happiest, most interesting people are those who have found the secret of maintaining their enthusiasm, the God within." And that's really what this is all about. And so I want to take you where it started for me, into what I call the womb of interconnectedness, which is the ocean. And it started with some bottlenose in Turks and Caicos, and they were having a mating ritual. It was 3 females and a male. And the male would rub the female, and then she would go up and take a breath, and then she would just drop in the water column and just slide down. And as she did, the other 2 females came up and cradled her. and they would just drop down until the male mated with her. And this went on for like 75 minutes, and I was in the water by myself. The sun was going down, the moon was going up, and I said, I can never be in the water again without a camera. And that's when this started. I'd been an avid scuba diver, but I never had a camera until after that moment. And so this became an utterly compelling passion for me. Being in the water, watching the symbiotic relationships. So this is me on the left swimming with in a coolie school in Hawaii and photographing a manta ray on the right. And to be able to do this on breath hold takes you to a whole other world of being in oneness with them in a world we're actually not meant to be in, which is underwater. Frankly, I kind of love it. These are pantropic spotted dolphins. They live in Hawaii and in other locations. And I think when I look at animals in the images and I come eye to eye with them, I'm like, what's the spiritual context for this? And I think the dolphins in all the species and forms have really mastered the art of having sacred sovereignty as individuals, but also thriving in a collective, a pod. Their level of communication with each other and through the water column, breaking apart and coming back together, is extraordinary. And I think they leave us with the message of that we belong. And we can really take a lesson from them that we're not really separate, that we're actually in a pod, not only with each other, but with the wildlife. And so sometimes they get a little frisky and they go nuts. And these were some bottlenose that decided to start playing. I don't know if this was a mating ritual or what was going on, but they were flying out of the water. And the bottlenose, the way their rostrum, which is their beak, is shaped, they always look like they're smiling. So they bring us into so much joy and awaken and activate all of that. This is a rough-toothed dolphin. You probably wouldn't know what they are or haven't seen them before. This guy came swimming in. He was catching little fish. And we had this eye-to-eye moment. And I just felt like he was checking me out as much as I was checking him out. And it was this moment of, I'm under the water in this blue with this animal. I'm like, can't I just go swim away with you? It seemed so romantic at the time, but probably not a good idea. And the manta rays. So this is one of the things that I think the ocean shows us about spiritual harmony is there are things called manta ray cleaning stations. And so they come and swim in over these coral formations. The fish that you see underneath them are a variety of wrasses. And the wrasse eat stuff off of them, the biological matter that they pick up swimming through the water column. And so it ends up being a symbiotic relationship in that the manta ray gets cleaned and the wrasse gets fed. I think we could use this model a lot more in today's world. And then the beauty of a whale shark. The markings on these animals just transport me. To me, it looks like if you blur your eyes, a night sky. And this whale shark was diving down, and I loved how it was hitting the light rays. It was diving into, these are the deep blue Hawaiian waters where there's very little, because of the temperature, there's very little microbes in the water. So the water's beautifully clear. It was just one of my absolute favorite moments. Okay, so I'm going to share a video with you. This is where we get into the sharing gymnastics. And so just sit back. That was some whale song that we recorded off our boat, and the males are the ones that sing like that. And so now I want to take you, we're going to come back up on dry land. I want to take you into a meadow, what I call a meadow of sweet abundance. And a friend of mine and I last July went to Hollow Bay in Alaska to Katmai and into these beautiful meadows with coastal grizzlies. And we were camping 6 days, 6 nights. So what happens is you get float planed in, you have to offload, 900 pounds of gear, set up your camp, put up a bear fence, put your cooler way far away from your tents. So if they get into the food, it's not near you. And then you trek for the rest of the day. So this is a 7-mile meadow where the bears are. And this is a pair of cubs. They're about 3 years old. So this would have been their 3rd year. So mom had just left them. And these animals, there's no condos, there's no houses, nothing. After a 2-hour float plane in, that's it. And if you don't have a sat phone, you have no way to communicate. And I loved this experience. It changed me. Sitting in this meadow of sedge grass where the glacier snow melts and reveals the grass, enriching it with all these nutrients. And the bears are free, doing their thing. And I know that we're taught these are super ferocious animals. They can be. But when they're in their own habitat and there's very little human interaction or activity around, they mind their own business and they're doing their own thing. And I think one of the beauties of photographing them in this meadow is there's a little bit less danger because they have such big sight lines. I wouldn't want to run into them in the bushes. That's a different thing when you surprise each other. And the light. So there were moms and cubs everywhere. This was a mom, we named her M4 just so we could share later about our encounters and our photos, which ones we were talking about. She has a 4th cub, he's just laying farther in the back. And she loved the sedge grass and she would graze in that area, and we'd start off with her, 50 feet or so away, and she was a very big bear. And before I knew it, I had put my camera down because she was too close. And she would be right there. And she would sniff us, but she would mind her own business. And she was just raising her cubs, doing her thing. And being able to sit with these animals while they discover their curiosity, while they spar with each other, siblings showing each other who's boss and trying to run the show, and having a good old time. And then moments of sweetness. And they're always eating grass. So every photo has them with grass in their mouth. There's no way to get around it. But it's like the communication and the interactions that they have with each other. It's like these animals are going to grow up to be the kind of animals that people are afraid of. And yet they have these moments of tenderness and sweetness. And this boar, which is a male bear, came walking into the edges of the water in the evening light. It's about 11 p.m. when the sun is setting behind the glaciers and it starts being diffused, hit his face. And I was like, all of the Hollywood stuff about bears and the reverent and all that just like melts away. It's like they're just beings. They're wild beings. Yeah, we want to be mindful of the situations that we're in with them. But what I saw was these animals just living their life. And it occurred to me that all of life, at play, at rest, grazing, is coated with this sweet abundance that we naturally are inherently designed to thrive and to flourish. And I'm sitting in the middle of this bear oasis as a human, and I'm the minority. And it was kind of cool to do that. This gives you a sense of what the environment looks like. And so on the bay, the tide goes out, and as soon as the tide's far enough out, the bears know it, they sense it, they smell it. They come walking up over the berm and they go down to the beach and they go clamming because they need a little bit of protein to augment their diet. And as you would expect, a mom with cubs, as soon as she pulls up a clam, a cub runs in and grabs it from her and takes it. And so, people don't see them in this kind of a way. And I want to tell the bear story the way the bears told me the story versus all the impositions on them. It doesn't mean you shouldn't take care when they're around, because they would definitely win a fight. But they also are these beings that when we're not interacting with them, there isn't any need for the kind of ferociousness and the violence that you hear about sometimes. And we do encroach on their habitat, especially more here in California, where they break into refrigerators and in Lake Tahoe and those kinds of things. But in this area, may they stay wild, because it's a minimum of a 2-hour plane flight to get to any human type of civilization, excuse me. And then you have this, you have cubs find a log and they think that's really fun. And mom goes, well, you aren't getting to play without me. And they start wrestling on top of the log. And it's just this joy and this exuberance, seeing these animals in this non-threatening kind of a way, grazing with each other and hanging out with mom. This was a bear. We named her Golden Arches because of the way she's shaped. And she was so golden that from a couple miles away, I could see and tell which bear she was. And this cub was shaped just like her. And the cub would never leave her side. And they kept having this moment with each other where you could feel their bond. And them in this habitat with these glaciers, these mountains, they have to eat everything they can find for 7 months out of a year, because they're going to eventually go hibernate and go clamming. Was just one of the most magical experiences that I've ever had. And I feel like this meadow is when I stopped being a photographer and I figured out that the animals were a mystical portal into understanding the sacred spiritual essence of this life that we're living. In some ways, I'm not different from them. In some ways, I'm completely different from them. But we're all this energetic essence. And they stand in the pure resonant field of all of what they are and we're coded with. And it reminds me to do the same. Okay, so I want to move into what is going to be a little bit of an intense story. And for years, I've grappled with the idea of scientists saying there's a missing link. For some reason, that always landed with me as like, is that really true? I don't know if that's really true. I'm not sort of buying the evidence. I don't feel like maybe we jumped time, or did we miss something? And I kept tuning into that. And so I went to Rwanda to visit the mountain gorillas. And this was about 15 months after my husband had died suddenly. And I was just coming out of shock and in a very heavy state of grief. And this was my only solace, was to just not be at home thinking about it, but instead to be out in the bush. And here I am with these animals. And the good news is that the troops are only visited 1 hour a day by no more than 10 people. And then that's it. And the hiking is extraordinary. It's minimum 5-6 hours in on a 20% grade. And what's really cool about Rwanda, they've evolved so much, is that the sons of the poachers are what you would call Sherpas. For $10, they'll carry my camera bag and my tripod and they'll hold my hand up the trail, helping me not fall into the stinging nettles for $10, and they no longer poach. How amazing is that? And these animals, their energy field, you can feel the emotions. Their capability for emotions is just powerful. I don't know how to give it words. They're intimidating, right? This silverback came over and he sat down in front of the photographers and he did this for like 10 minutes. And I'm like, this guy knows that we come visit him and he's just going to sit up here and do his thing. And then he eventually goes and walks away. He's like, I gave them their shot. Now they'll get out of here. It was really fascinating to see him just sit there and let everybody take pictures of him. And then another day, we were visiting a different troop, and the energy was really different. And I felt the energy field of grief. The silverback kept having his back to us. And I asked the guide, should we be here? I feel like we're intruding because there's something going on. And he said, we're just going to go sit over here for 30 minutes and see if they change. So we went away where they couldn't see us, and they started going back to their normal tasks. And so then we slowly came back and infiltrated. I'm hearing somebody's mic open, I think. Amber, Would you help me with whoever needs to be muted? Thank you.
Yeah, it's solved.
Thank you. And so we go back in to this troop and we just go in really slowly. And I find myself walking over to the left. And that's when I smelled a carcass. And forgive the quality of these photos. This was a moment where it was like, take a shot, put the camera down, because I didn't want to intrude. So these aren't photographic, great images, but she's holding a deceased baby and she's stroking its head and she's rocking back and forth, holding it, looking at it with this tender, loving care. And then she picks up its fingers and starts kissing the fingers. And I'm like, I took a couple shots and I put my camera down. I'm like, I can't. And I got lost in this field with her where it was like, there's no missing link. We're missing the link. This kind of infinite, unbearable compassion. This type of ecological grief that we are currently holding for our planet. This gorilla is showing me how to be with this epic loss of my beloved husband, who actually was supposed to be with me on this trip, and he's not here. She showed me how to be with it, that you turn towards it, that you put everything into it, and you hang on to the bits and the parts until there's nothing left, but you keep living and you love, and you let yourself go on, but you don't turn away. And I learned later from the guides that mountain gorillas will carry their deceased until there's nothing left. And I'm just like, the missing link is a link to courageous compassion as human beings. I know for myself, until this moment, I didn't know what that meant. And so I felt implicated to hold the hands of these beings energetically. And I got lost in this transmission with her in this other world, this other domain I was able to enter by watching her rock and kiss the baby. The guide comes over and taps me on the shoulder and he says, we gotta go. And I'm like, I've been here 2 minutes. What are you talking about? And as I look around, to the right of me are 3 other females, to the left are 2 other females, and we're in a half moon shape, sitting, watching the matriarch kind of holding her in this half moon. And I was blown away. And I was like, this is why I do this. This is why. Because I'm being shown something incredible here. And I feel implicated to do something about it, to be a generative steward. How can I help them thrive? And so that's my story of the mountain gorilla, and I think she shows us how we can be with our ecological grief and go on. And so I want to move to another story of a mystical encounter with a rhino horn, and this story isn't the easiest one to hear either, and then we'll get into the joy. But I promised you some truth telling, and these are really intimate stories I haven't told before. Not in this way, and not with images. So I was in South Africa, and this is a hide. So it's basically an underground bunker, and it was newly built. And so you go in through the tunnel and they lock you in for 24 hours. And so there's a micro kitchen, a bathroom, there's 4 bunk beds. And on the left, you can see there's glass by the water. We have camera tripods. So there's room for 4, but there were only 2 of us in there this night. And early evening, Mama Rhino and her calf show up, and I'm at eye level with her, and I lose it. There are tears streaming down my face. I'm looking at a rhino with a full horn intact who has a calf with a full horn intact. If you go on safari in Africa in the major national parks and you see rhinos, they won't have horns. This was on a private game reserve. They were formerly sugar plantation, and they decided to be a part of the South Africans that want to save this species, so they have them on their property. And then it turned nightfall and she came back. And she turned her head to the side with this horn, one of the longest rhino horns I've ever seen. There was moonlight in the sky glistening off of it. It was like things were bubbling and shimmering and shining, and my eyes probably rolled up in the back of my head, and I had this mystical encounter where I was like, what part of that is an aphrodisiac other than pure joy? And I felt so responsible for the poaching of these animals, that these animals are on a private farm because they're not safe in the wild with a horn like that. And what I will tell you is overnight, poachers came on this property while I was in the hide. And they had shot a baby rhino trying to get the mom to come out of the bush because they wanted her horn. They caught the poachers. The rhinos were fine. Nobody got any horns. They arrested the poachers. They were transported to jail. But when I came out of the hide, Charles, the guy who owns the property, I looked at him and I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "You guys might want to stay, but we have 42 rhinos and we're taking all the horns off today." This was the last time she was photographed, to my knowledge, unless they let her horn grow back, with a horn. And I was like, this is not okay. And so there are some cultures that believe rhino horn dust. What they do is they take the rhino horn, they mash it into dust, and they turn it into a powder. They put it in a box that looks like a cigar box, and there are certain cultures that believe that it enhances sexual prowess. It's been scientifically proven that it does not. There's a woman in Hawaii, and I won't mention her name because she's in Black Ops about all of this because she's funding all the research. And it's really heart-wrenching, the loss of rhinos. And so the upside here, what you're looking at are images with me with the black mambas. So if you want to Google it, you can see plenty of interview videos. And I was also had the privilege of interviewing them and taping a video with them. They are young Black South Africans. They patrol Kruger National Park, and they are a nonviolent unit. And so when they see poachers or anything going on, they call the rangers. These women live in the communities where the poachers are. And as a privileged white woman, I came in pissed, saying, the guys with the money paying for this because they want more sexual prowess need to stop what they're doing. And these women taught me a lesson about the reason this goes on is, yes, there's that whole side of it, but it's really complex and complicated. Because what they taught me is that those people who poach the horns, who break into the parks, that cut the fence, that whack the horn off and take it and put it in their pocket, get paid thousands. And the reason they'll do it is because they live in poverty and there's not enough food to feed their families. So the ones who have money that want the sexual prowess prey upon the ones who have nothing, who feel like white people come over here and go on safari, then why don't I have any rights to these resources as well? And I can't feed my family. And they feel justified in doing it. So it's a really complex issue. So my little pissosity about it was only looking at it from one side. These young women are educating their community about this as a natural resource. They're pulling in all kinds of other trainings and educations and bringing in people to support their community so the community is fed, housed, clothed, and watered, and doing it from the perspective of why this happens in the first place. I was blown away by their articulateness, by their passion, and that they're the women that can make the difference doing this. And I just really wanted to share the story with you because they're having an impact. And yeah, there's a lot more work to do. The years that I've researched Rhino Foundations, what I've come away with is we have to get to the youth in the culture that believes in outdated assumptions that rhino horn is actually an aphrodisiac when it's scientifically proven that it isn't. And I think that's where the work is to do. But I wanted to share this heartwarming story with you about something that's really hard to be with. And that there is good work being done in the world, that there's hope, that there's women like this, and we can use them as a model for what we can be doing because they sit with this in their face. They see it, but they're still being activists and solving the problem at the grassroots level so there's no motivation to take a rhino horn in the first place. So that's my ode to them. In other parts of South Africa and protected lands, rhinos thrive. when you're out in the bush and you come across them like this, you don't call out on the radio where they are, because we don't talk about where they are. And if you see them, you don't share photos and you don't tag the location. There's a protocol around all of this. And we have a month-old. Look at this little guy, right? Here he is. He's out there. He's like running around. He has an oxpecker on his face, eating some goodies, and life continues. So yes, it's a hard thing to hold. And I think we're being called forward as sacred stewards at this time to become very generative, to find healthy ways to restore ecosystems, to restore species in a balanced way, not an overbalanced way or an underbalanced way, so that nature can come back into harmony with us. And I don't know, these animals touch me in such a deep way that I have an affinity for a baby rhino and go, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to do what I can for you. And so right now my part is to speak up and to share these moments in this kind of way that to me has been vulnerable to talk about for a really long time. And this forum has given me the permission to be able to do that, and I'm beyond grateful. All right, so the matriarchs of peace are my queens, the elephants. So this is an award-winning photo that I took, and I want to share this heartwarming story with you. The elephants, they have this rumble that they do when they talk to each other. And it's a kind of powerful form of communication. And if you come up on a herd, they live in bull herds and matriarch herds. The matriarchs have all the babies with them. And I've had circumstances where I've come up upon a herd, and before your very eyes, they're moving, but they don't look like they are. And they're rumbling and they're talking to each other. And where they were all spread out before, and I don't have good video of this. I wish I did, but I don't, because it's really and quite a thing to see. The smallest are in the very center, and then the next oldest, and the next oldest, and the next oldest, and then the big matriarchs are on the outside, and they're facing whatever it is. And there's another elephant behind looking that way with its bum, and all the little ones in the middle. Their caretaking is on a whole nother level. No one's left behind. It doesn't matter whose baby is who. It matters that they are the peace and the protectors. So this little elephant, they went down to the water to drink. This was in Botswana on the Chobe River. The baby was too little to get in. He was gonna drown. So he walked back out, and he's standing out there. Mom notices this, so she goes and gets a trunk full of water. And she comes back and she's got her trunk curled up. She comes over to the baby and she lowers her trunk, and the baby sticks its trunk inside her trunk and gets water like a straw because it was too little to get a drink. So mom brings the water to the baby in her trunk. And I was like, what am I seeing? This is so amazing. And I think this speaks to the potency of the level of care that we can take for each other, for our young, for taking care of the planet for our young in this kind of way, bringing the water to them, letting us be the well, and really curating a planet forward consciousness so the little ones will get to enjoy it too. So we're going to take a little respite here, and I'm going to share a video with you. And I want you to just sit back and listen. And after all of the things, I know I shared some really heavy stuff, let this just lighten your heart.
sun, tomorrow's rain. We watch the stairs away. Something in our minds will always stay. Perhaps this final act was meant to clinch a lifetime's argument. But nothing comes from violence, and nothing ever could. For all us born beneath an angry star. Lest we forget how fragile we are. On and on the rain will fall, like tears from a star, like tears from a star. On and on the rain will say how fragile we are, how fragile we are.
Okay. So far, sharing gymnast, I shouldn't say that. Okay. Now I want to talk to you about a cheetah queen. So in South Africa, in the greater Karoo mountain range, there once was the greatest migration of 20 million springbok. And because farmers and ranchers moved in, they put up fences. It basically completely and totally removed that. Most people don't even know that there was such a thing. And there's a woman named Sarah Tompkins who bought up an extraordinary amount of farms, and she let the land rest for 11 years. And then a cheetah who had been badly beaten, and that's a really long story, and it's a Nat Geo film. If you want to find out more, ask me and I'll give you all the details. Found her way to Sarah. And at the time, Sarah didn't have any animals on the property, so it was a safe place for this cheetah to recover. That cheetah's name is Sabella, and she did recover. Even though she had her tendons in her arms and her bones broken, they didn't ever think she would hunt again, but she did. And then she got pregnant, and she brought the cubs to Sarah, and that's when Sarah's journey of rehabilitating wild cheetah DNA and restoring these lands and bringing cheetahs into this area for the first time in 150 years began. It's a place called Samara, and you can go there and visit. Last year I spent 60 days, 6-7 hours a day walking with these incredible beings. And so the cat at the top, her name is Chili. She is Sabella's daughter. She has on a collar because in South Africa, adult predators have to wear collars because, farmers and ranchers are right next door with sheep and goat and cattle, and you have to be able to keep track of them. So this is Chili with 2 cubs. But what happened last year is she ended up with 8 cubs. 5 were her own and 3 were her daughters, her daughter Inara. Somehow they all commingled and Chili ended up with all 8 of them. She didn't have to raise all 8 of them, but she did. And she raised them to adulthood successfully. The cheetah cub survival rate is less than 5%. So for a cheetah mom to single-handedly successfully raise 8 cubs is an extraordinary undertaking. And that's what happened on this property, and these animals were living as a pride, which is unusual cheetah behavior. And so these animals, as of last November, were moved onto other properties because the cheetahs have been so close to extinction that the DNA pool has been very limited and contaminated because siblings were mating with each other. And there's an organization around Africa that manages the DNA, and they're keeping track of where these cheetahs go. So every time a cheetah on Samara gets pregnant, they remove that male and bring in another male, and they keep one of the females. And so this, between Sabella and Chili and Inara, they have successfully repopulated 150 cheetahs with clean DNA into Tanzania, into Kenya. This woman is my heroine. Doing this is the kind of generative, restorative work that's going to really matter and make a difference. And these animals, you know, when they start going off, these are cheetah cubs. These guys are about 8 months old. You can still tell they're cubs because they have a scruff on their neck. And they run around and they start doing this all day long, all over the place. The speed, you can see that they're world-class athletes just by their body positions. And then they do this, you know, again, like the bears, the sparring, showing each other who's boss and that kind of a thing. And it's just an incredible adventure to be on foot with these animals. We have a photography permit, so we get to spend a lot of hours with these guys, but having a backstage pass to the world of a cheetah is on a whole nother level. And I'm beyond grateful for having witnessed this once in a lifetime moment of a cheetah mom successfully raising 8 cubs. Drinking at the dam and going running through the water, and this backlit moment was one of my favorite action shots that happened like they'd just gotten out of the car and cheetah took off. And it was one of those when you got to be ready for it, because there were 2 other cheetahs, but they didn't do it. They walked around the edge. So this happened one time, and it's moments like this that I try to be prepared for. This is a cub getting up on a limb. They get up to view so they can see farther where their prey is. And this is the cover photo that's on my book, Wild Sacred Beauty. And I wanted to specifically point this out to you because while this might look like a branch right here, I had my intention this day to find the book cover to my photo. And here, this is not a branch. That is the Holy Mother from the side view, if you look at her. And I was like, am I really seeing this? And Shiloh, I was doing this book while I was the idea came from Color of Woman as a graduate project. And this is when I knew that that energy field of intentional creativity was there. It took me a little while because I saw the tree, so my mind is going tree. It took me a while after I came home to actually realize what I was seeing. And, you know, it's the most interesting thing, the power of intention. And I tell you the story about Chili because she was a very resourced cat. She never questioned or wondered, how am I going to feed 8 cubs? I'm going to expand to handle it. And that's why I love her story. And so with that, we move on to the fierce, the playful, and the tender. And I just have one last little quick video I want to share with you. And so, you know, this is on an iPhone. The lion cub is not walking to me. I'm actually in a car over on the right. I put my iPhone down on a little thing. This was in November of 2020. These cubs have never seen people before. They might only be a couple months old, but they're still lions. And this is their father. Right after that, here comes this boy walking out of the bush. And what does he do? He gets up on Pride Rock. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? I love this photo of him way up high, the stormy clouds in the background, and him owning his space. And this is what you get with moms and cubs. The ferocity of these animals, make no mistake, these guys are killing machines and they're good at it. But for the big cats, they're rare in that they live mostly in a family environment and they operate in prides. The women's run the show and they take care of the cubs and they play with the cubs. And like, here's this little guy already being this ferocious little lion trying to get mom angry, right? Maybe not such a good idea. And playing with each other. As you might know, big cats engage in the pounce practice all day long. And then you have these two lionesses sitting in the rain and she starts shaking it off. And I'm like, look at this moment. This is glorious. They don't really like the rain. Cats don't really like being wet. But I just love this moment of seeing them in that. The weather gets to them too. And seeing her shake off this rain, it was kind of a magical thing. So I just want to say a little bit about mating, big cat mating. Because there's this misunderstanding that it's rape, and it's not. And this is a mating pair. And yes, it's brutal. They don't mate like we do. They're cats. But what happens is the female, when she's in estrus, goes over to the male and she swings her bottom and her tail in his face. If he smells estrus, he will mate with her. They will engage in 7 days straight of mating because they ensure pregnancy, and they won't eat, they won't stop, and they won't engage with if other lions come around, they'll scare them away or they'll go off on their own. And then when she's done, she tells him she's done. And I've spent many hours witnessing and watching, and yeah, there's injuries and wounds from claws and bites, but this is how they ensure pregnancy. And a female can give birth 3 to 4 times a year. And I just wanted to clear it up that these kind of action shots tell the story of what's happening in the wild and what these animals are doing and how they live. And they're really powerful creatures. And the females are running the show when it comes to mating. So I just wanted to share that and clear the air about that. And then there's cubs. This was a moment in Tanzania, November 2020, that I've never experienced in my life, but I've always wanted to. We came out of the camp and I saw a dead jackal that was a fresh kill laying beside the road. And I said, Exaud, he's my friend in Tanzania and my driver, why is there a jackal laying there? And he's like, his eyes got big. And it was like he knew something and he goes, hang on. And so we went driving and this lioness comes walking back and she has this look on her face. And he said, the jackal got too close to her den. That's my guess, is that she has cubs and she's going to get them. So we sat at the edge of the marsh where she had come out of, about a quarter mile away from the jackal. And here she comes with a cub in her mouth. And I'm like, stop. And so they get heavy, so they put them down and then they pick them up. And what I've learned that was so fascinating is she will walk the exact same line all the way to the den and then all the way back to where she's moving them. We think she had 4 cubs. We saw her move 3. She was coming back and she'd already moved one of them. Is they walk the same line. So if a cub gets lost or a hyena comes in or any kind of disruption, the cub can follow the scent to where she moved them. It's quite amazing. So when you're pregnant, you don't want to be around the cubs, you go up a tree. I love this girl. Her look on her face is like, I cannot be bothered. Please don't bother me. And I just want to say, as we start to wrap up here about the cubs, is they play and they goof around, but don't think for a minute, this guy ain't watching. They're so fast to turn into killing machines. There's a lot of play, but they never lose that ferocity. And we'll end here with a black-maned Kalahari lion. They're a third bigger, larger than the tawny lions that we were just looking at. They live in the Kalahari Desert. And this guy gave me the stare down of a lifetime. And he was transmitting, I am all power. I am all omnipotent. And if you get out of that vehicle, I'm going to win. And I wanted people to know what it feels like to be in the presence of incredible power like this. And so we complete. And I just want to thank you all for being here. And my book is Wild Sacred Beauty. You can go to wildsacredbeauty.com/book. You can pre-order a hard copy or get a PDF, whatever you like if you want. There's a lot of images in here that are not in the show. And I just want to thank you all for your attention and for being here, for giving me this opportunity to speak up like this, to share something that is who I am and what I am about, and to be willing to do that in a public forum. I came from corporate America, and so I have this editor in my head that likes to tell me I should be doing this or that, and I don't, and that's not who I am. And COVID pushed me further into this. The death of my husband pushed me further into this, and now I know that it's my sacred work. And so I thank you all so much for being here. And that concludes my portion of the show.
Brava, brava, brava! Whee! Brava!
I know that was a lot visually and me talking a lot. I know it's a lot. It's like, I was trying to.
Julie is just incredible. I'd love for all of us to allow ourselves to just take a big, beautiful breath right now. We've never gotten to get that close to him in that way, from someone that is trusted, that we appreciate. So I just really want to honor you and honor those creatures and honor the lands and all of you for coming to this experience, Julie. Thank you for your care and for the stewardship that I know that you're doing with the different organizations. You're not just going to take the photos, you're telling the stories, and you're doing the work of generative stewardship and conservation. And it is beautiful to see this commitment and this relationship of their wild sacred beauty speaking to the wild sacred beauty in you. And I think the book is phenomenal. Jonathan and I got some pre-release copies, and they're just so exquisite. And the stories, just like what you were telling, the stories are in the book. So I hope some of you will be able to receive the book.
Yeah. I've been working on a TED Talk since the beginning of the year, when this became really clear that this was that I couldn't leave this unspoken before I leave the planet in my own way.
Mm-hmm.
And having been toe to toe with it.
Yeah. And when you, at this point in your journey, I know people are sending you regards too for the loss of your beloved. And I know that this has been a part of your journey.
Yeah. I had a mountain gorilla tell me how to do it.
Every finger. Yes.
Yeah. It continues to unfold, and the deep connection that I feel to the divine within me has spoken to me in this way, that has caretaken my whole life, has orchestrated every moment, from the moment I heard you need to go to Africa before you die, was all for this moment right here. No shit. No shit. All of it, including Regan coming in and Regan walking on, all of it, and him being a part of that. And then everything deepened. And then I met my South African photography mentor, Lo, and we have a podcast and we travel together all the time. And, it's just like he gave me the ability where the technology of this is not in my way. That.
I've been thinking of Lo during this, and the different people who have supported you and guided you, and the woman at Samara, and just like all the work that you've done and the relationships that you've forged, and that you do it all with this intentional creativity, that this framework is
Yes.
that you are in a relationship of reciprocity.
Doing my best.
It's a journey. It certainly is.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing these beauties and these experiences to us. And as we're coming to a close, what would you
Yeah.
like our community, and thank you to Julie's guests for coming. And I know that those friends and family watching the recording later, what would you like to share with us as you're closing?
You know, I really want to share to just take a moment, even in your own backyard, to listen to the layers of the habitat, to witness and be present to what's there. And in whatever way possible, whatever calls to you. Some people it'll be the ocean, some people it'll be flowers. I know Marnie's here, and her and I've had a deep love conversation about those that bloom. And whatever that is for you, how can you step more fully into the generative stewardship of that? And it doesn't have to be a big thing. It just,
Right.
like you were sharing your story about planting all the pollinators, making space for the pollinators. You know, my friend Roussel and Dennis are on, and their garden is, I go sit there. I'm like, I apologize for being there for 7 hours in their gazebo, but the bees and like, that's the essence of what we're really made up of, is stardust made manifest in all these different forms. And let the magic show you the optimal blueprint for how we can be sacred stewards of all of this.
Thank you so much, Julie. We at the Intentional Creativity Foundation are so glad to feature you on in this exhibit, in this experience. And so thank you all for joining us in the jungle, in the bush, in the tree. And so we are just inviting you to continue to take this into your day, into your night, into your dreams, as we each, just as Julie does when she prepares to go. It is a quest. There's a preparation, and then there's like the way that you leave. And I know that when Julie leaves, there's a lot of mourning, and she often doesn't want to talk to me or anyone for a while. When she gets back, she has this sort of decompression time. And I kind of feel that too, like we summoned the walking into the presence of the wild. And
Yeah.
now I'm inviting all of us to gently make our way back into our homelands and spaces and spend some time, as Julie has advised us, to listen to the layers.
Yeah. And if you need to be a bear sleeping on the edge of the creek in the warm sun, good time to do that too. I'm open for some interactions or questions. I don't know what you and Amber's timeline is like. I can also stay on beyond you. If people want to do that, I'm just offering that.
Yeah, I have a little bit more time. So if you wanted to do some Q&A, maybe for about 10 minutes.
Sure. Thank you, Amber. And thank you, Amber, for holding the space and the container and your graciousness. And it just always feels so held around you. And this was a little bit of a technology gymnastic, and I know your presence had everything to do with the grace of it. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah. What do you think's the best way? And post it in the chat or raise their hand. Or I see Anasuya, yes, or just. Yay. Thank you, Shiloh. Thank you, everyone. Hi, beloved.
My goddess, deep bow, deep bow, deep bow. What you have offered us has been taking my breath away. And I can't tell you how fantastic it was to have my breath taken again and again and again. I'm so moved by the experience you gave us of the under the water, my favorite place I want to go to and stay. It's taken us to my favorite animals, the elephants, and their matriarchal love and protection. Thank you so much for being willing to be your divine essence and not human, so that they can see your divine essence and allow you their presence. I thank you for letting go of all of the humanness that is a natural block to oneness. I thank you for that surrender and that deep humility that they could appreciate and honor by giving you their presence. Thank you. And my question is I'm stuck on the rhino farm. Why did the man who had them, all 24 of them, safe and away from poachers, why did he say on one night they're gonna cut all their horns off? They were there so that wouldn't happen. I don't understand that.
Okay, so maybe I didn't tell the story as eloquently as I would have liked to. So that night while I was in the hide, poachers did come on their property.
Yeah.
And they shot a baby rhino in the bum, trying to get the mom to come out of the bush.
No, that I got.
Yeah. Well, so they shaved off all the horns so the poachers wouldn't be tempted to come on their property anymore.
Yeah, that's the part you left out.
That's the part I left out. I apologize for that. And thank you for asking. South Africans are allowed to trade a certain amount of rhino horn. But his mother had become very afraid of the poachers, and that for her was the last straw. And so that's why they decided to shave off all the horns. And that's how it hit me really hard. And I apologize for leaving that detail out. And thank you for highlighting it and bringing it back.
Thank you, because a piece of me was stuck in rhino land. I was trying to enjoy the rest, but I'm like, wait.
Wait, yeah.
You left me at the side of the road
I'm
back there.
so sorry, honey.
Okay, so it was for their protection.
It was for their protection.
I needed to hear that. Okay.
It was for their protection. Yeah. So in the wild or in non privately owned land where you'll find rhinos, if they leave them out in national parks, they shave their horns off. So the people who have rhinos on private land are trying to protect them and leave them with horns. But if their families become threatened or someone in their family feels uncomfortable because poachers, this is a property that has never been poached. That particular night it was poached. And I felt deeply implicated. And what I forgot to mention in all of that is that his mom became extremely frightened and said, that's it, take the horns off. No more poachers allowed on our property, because they have such huge property, they can only manage so much, making sure. So it keeps the animals alive if they don't have a horn.
Yes.
Sadly. Thank you.
Deep bow for your service to humanity, remembering to be humane.
Thank you. And I apologize for leaving you on the side of the road. Come with. There's so much to say. I'm trying to pay attention. And thank you for your blessing and acknowledgement. It felt like a blessing, and I really hear you. Really hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I've been in love with you since Radiant. And I didn't even know you did this. I knew you from the money side. So my God, my brain is just exploding.
Yes, we need to connect offline. I think there's a lot to say.
Yes. So I shall bow out so other people can talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
If anyone wants to raise their hand, you can press the reactions button on the bottom of your screen and the raise hand option, where you can put your question in the chat. Looks like we have a question from Patty.
How are we doing on time, Amber?
You can take another question.
Okay. Miss Patty Hagen.
Hello, how are you?
Hi, honey.
Good to see you.
You too.
I loved your show. Was just absolutely amazing, just incredible, Julie. Thank you. The pictures, the videos, your storytelling was just, I just can't even begin to describe how I felt. It truly was a spiritual connection. There's no question about that. I have a question. My question is about one of the elephants. Towards the end of your elephant pictures, there were two, I think they were coming out of the water. One had their tusks, and the other one looked like the tusk was flattened. So had they had their tusks cut off to protect them?
Well, when elephant tusks are poached, they slice their face off.
Right. But I thought maybe-
they don't survive it. This guy, those were older bulls, which are males. And so sometimes they rut or they rub up against stuff. They were broken.
Okay.
And those guys will be what we call tuskers, which if you've ever seen one is mind blowing. Their tusks graze the ground. They're so huge. And so I think after a while they get heavy and they go and break them off.
Because they've got to weigh a ton
Yeah.
literally to carry those. Okay.
They're
Yes, I
really,
couldn't
they're
think-
very heavy.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine out in the wild that anybody would have been able to capture the elephant and
Yeah, you're not getting a tusk off an elephant and just go, oh, let me just trim that for you. Yeah, that's
No.
not going to happen.
it's not
You're gonna
like
get
in my
skewered.
nails.
Yeah,
No,
you're going to get skewered.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Great question.
Any other questions before we move to close? I saw someone's hand go up.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Sasha. Hi, MC. Oh my God, I wasn't looking at who's here, and it's like, oh, I'm so excited. Hi, Sash.
Hi. So I just feel like I really loved seeing you sharing what you came here to do. Like, that is very moving. And I feel very enlivened to be invited into receiving the transmissions, even just from seeing what you brought to us. So I want to thank you for that. And I wanted to ask about the dolphins, and you had talked about the way the female dolphins support each other in the water column. Could you just say a little more about that?
Yeah, and I have to say, I have yet to see on video what I saw. So there's 4 of them and they're swimming. These were bottlenose. It was in the Caribbean. And the male would go particularly, and they were including me. So they were swimming around me. Like I was in the circumference of their circle and I just stayed put. And the male would particularly go rub up against a female, like indicating it's you. And she would go up and she would take a breath. And then she would just do this. Slower, but she would just, like it was the most epic surrender I've ever seen of everything. And the other 2 females come in and they cradle her, and all 3 of them just go drop in the water column. And he comes over and he gently mates. They don't mate long, and their mating isn't as violent as big cats. And come over and mates. And he swims away, and then they all just go down to the bottom. And then he goes and rubs up against the next female, and she goes up and catches a breath. Same thing. Over and over and over again. This surrender thing was like sublime to watch. And I didn't have a camera. And I've never seen it since.
Well, then I'm especially glad to hear you share about it, because that image of surrender is something I'll especially be carrying with me tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, and the other females coming in to all of them in this graceful holding, supporting her while she just opened to him, was on the next level. Thank you, Sasha. Thank you, everyone. My gratitude is beyond words, and I hope that something spoke to you and moved you and touched you. And thank you. And Amber, I hand it back over to you.
Thank you, Julie. This has been just an absolutely inspiring show, and I'm just so grateful for everyone being here. I did share in the chat that we will have this museum show recording available on our virtual museum site, imusea.org, within 24 hours, and it's also going to be on YouTube. So if you'd like to share this inspiration forward and share about Julie's work, you'll be able to do that. And I'm sure Julie will also be sharing it through her own personal channels and her Facebook as well. So we want you to stay connected, and we'll have a page in our exhibitions site that will also house the recording and another conversation that Julie had with curator Shiloh Sophia previously that goes into the heart of this work as well. So once again, thank you all for being here. Thank you, Julie, for taking the risk to share everything you shared today, for stepping beyond your own borders and, be into the unusual, stretching yourself to be here. Thank you so much, because I know that this was something that you've been birthing for a long time. So we've been absolutely astonished. There's been tears, there has been hearts opened, and we would love to have you back again sometime. I know you're going to keep on doing this, so maybe let's talk about another show in the future where you can keep bringing this spiritual essence of wild earth to us, and we can all learn to be with the earth, not living on the earth, but with the earth, truly. So with that, I want to say good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I hope you all are well, and as Shiloh said, moving into the space of re-entering after this, and we'll see you again at our next museum show.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Shiloh.
Thank you.
Bye, loves.